webinar. And then I'm going to put it on Facebook. One of the tricks is that I go live on my Facebook page, and then I have to share that to our company page, and then someone from the Appalachian Trail Conservancy also shares it to their page. So we're just making sure it's streaming as many places as possible. All right, I see it up here, so I'm going to share it. Share. Okay, I think I've gotten better at this throughout the spring series. I hope that we are now in all the places that we are supposed to be. And I assume that you are calling from New York today, from your home. Is that?
Yep. Yes. The city's so nice, they named it twice.
The city's so you've never lived anywhere else, have you?
No, I never lived anywhere else, and I don't intend to. I love it here.
You know, my mom's from New York City.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which borough?
Manhattan, you know.
Yep. I'm in Queens.
Okay.
But I've lived in Manhattan.
Yeah, her parents retired to Asheville when she was like 18. So that sort of took her out of the city. And for a while we had family up there, but they have all moved out too. But it's always special to me, and you know, because of that connection.
Yeah. And Asheville, I haven't been there yet, but you are the third person from Asheville that's interviewed me. you know Derek. I know Derek Lugo, I'm sure. I don't know if you know Marilyn Ball.
Oh yeah, I know who she is.
The radio, news radio, 880. She got a thing called Speaking of Travel. So I did something with her a couple of years ago. I mean,
well, this means that you need to come to Asheville.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've heard a lot of nice things. Even lately, some people I know in the Explorers Club have been there.
Well, you know,
everybody speaks highly of it. Yeah.
We'd love to host you or help out. And we have a hiking company, Blue Ridge Hiking Company. So if Broken Bow ever wants to do a collab, then we could host you. You could do a trip or I don't know, a talk or something down here. But let's see, we still have 2 more minutes, so we can chit chat for a little bit longer. Folks are joining us. Welcome. We are going to get started right at 12 o'clock. Hopefully some folks from work can join us on their lunch break. What are you having for lunch today, JR?
I don't typically eat lunch. I like to have a nice hearty breakfast and then go on until dinner time. So, you know, maybe a snack, bagel. You know, I'm New York, I'm a bagel. So
yeah,
I eat bagels, cup of coffee. But not really big lunch.
Yeah. What's your favorite New York food? Is it a bagel? Is it the pizza? Is it all the like different types of food that are there? What do you love about the New York food scene?
I'm going to go with your basic cheeseburger, French fries.
I know.
And a nice cold beer, you know.
I had a feeling, I mean, based off your book, I know you're a burger guy, right? Like after your hike. So I might have a question about that during the interview. And I think at this point it is high noon. So if you're ready, I'll get started. That's okay?
Yes.
All right. Welcome everyone to the Armchair Adventure Book Club. We are doing the fourth book in our series today, and in many ways we feel like we saved the best for last. So today we are going to talk about Way Out There with the author, J.R. Harris. I know I've heard a lot of our book club members who have gotten in touch and said they just really love this book. Several of them said it was their favorite one. And JR, what comes across to me is your adventures are so epic. I consider myself an adventurer, and I'm like, I don't think I could be that cold or that remote up in some of the places where you were. And yet you as a person come across as so relatable, so relatable. You're so accomplished, but yet so accessible. So for folks joining us who have not yet read the book, hopefully you'll want to pick it up after this interview. But to give you a little bit more information about JR, he is the author of Way Out There. He is also the owner of the oldest African-American research and consulting firm in the United States. So a very accomplished professional. He also, because of all his adventures and travels, was introduced into the Explorers Club. He's been a member for quite a while. He served on the board of directors. He was chair of the DEI committee and is now an emeritus member for the Explorers Club, and also a history maker, which is an honor that the club bestows. So again, just very accomplished, but extremely relatable. We're super happy to have you here today. And the way I like to start our author book talks is I like you to answer some sort of fast-paced, quick, short form questions that are fun. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, what is one place you still want to go?
The moon.
Oh gosh, that's amazing. Okay, so many of your adventures were in cold weather locations. I want to know the hottest you've ever been. Where was that?
Whoa. I've done some desert trips, so I'm going to say the Sahara Desert.
Okay.
One of the hot spots.
How hot was it? Do you know?
It's too hot for me, you know. In the high 90s, low 100s, okay. You know, and I've been several places where it's been pretty hot. As you mentioned, cold weather suits me a little bit more, although I hate being cold. I like being in cold weather, but I don't like being cold.
Yeah, that I my Achilles heel. So I really, I like shivered reading your book. I was like, no. Okay, we were already joking about this before the start of the official book club, but you are a hamburger guy. Like, you end your trips and you look for like a hamburger and a cold beer. So I want to know, what is the best, most satisfying hamburger that you have ever had?
I got one.
Okay.
Yes, and if you're ever there, it's in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Okay.
Right on the main drag. There's a burger joint that advertises like a 2-pound hamburger. It's huge, and it's got everything on it. And if you can eat it, if you can eat the whole thing, they'll either give you another one for free, or they'll call 911 to take you to General Hospital to pump your stomach out. But yeah, that's the kind of thing, I mean, your eyes are bigger than your stomach.
Yeah.
And everything tastes so good. And even now when I say the word cheeseburger, wait, I'll be back. I gotta go get a cheeseburger.
Now you want lunch.
I want lunch. Yeah.
Did you finish the 2-pound burger?
Oh no. I knew I wasn't gonna finish it. But I wanted to have it sitting in front of me because I've been thinking about it so long, and just to take a photo of it,
yeah,
and to eat whatever I wanted. That's what I wanted. So if you're ever up there in Fairbanks and you want a burger, take it from JR. That's the place to go.
My husband's not watching today because he's actually doing a short section hike on the AT. And I'm glad, because if he had heard you say that, it would be like on the list. Like, we're doing it. I'm eating the burger. Okay, I love asking this question. If you could hike with anyone living, anyone who's passed away, who would it be?
Whoa. Let's see. Give me a second on that one. So many people. I think I would like to go with, man, that's a tough one, and here's the reason why. I like to go alone.
I know.
And, I'm not antisocial. I'm not, misanthropic. I just like my own solitude. Every hike that I've been on, and I haven't been all that many, but any ones that I've been on with friends have all been great.
Yeah.
But when push comes to shove, hiking is my kind of getting away by myself deal. And, I'm thinking, if I had the opportunity, like you're asking me, who would I want to go with? I don't know. I think I would go by myself.
J.R. Harris.
J.R.
Harris would hike with J.R. Harris.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. There's nothing wrong with that. What is the longest you've had a song stuck in your head, and what was the song? Right?
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
Because when I hike, like a lot of other backpackers, I'm sure a song gets into your head and you can't get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that happens to me all the time. And yes, in all my trips, there's one song that keeps coming back and keeps coming back. And that song is by my favorite rock group of all time, the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And the tune is Truckin', of course. So I've sung and hummed and whispered and shouted Truckin' on 6 continents.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I should have guessed that from your book. You also reference another song early on. I have it right here. So it was really perfect. There was a riff of Junior Walker, and the song was I'm a Road Runner, right? That was like the start of your adventuring career. And the chorus was money who needs it. Let me live my life free and easy. Put a toothbrush in my hand, which is good for an adventurer to remember. Let me be a traveling man, because I'm a road runner, baby.
That song was big in early 1960s, Junior Walker and the All-Stars.
Yeah.
When I was driving to Alaska in that first chapter of my book back in 1966, that song was coming over the radio, seems like every couple of hours.
Really?
And it was really a motivating factor. It kept me going because it was just the perfect song at the perfect time.
And it made you remember your toothbrush.
And it made me remember my toothbrush. That's right.
Okay, cool. Well, those were my short, fun questions. Thanks for answering those. And now I want to kind of dive into some of the things you talk about in the book. So feel free to expound upon these things, long or short, whatever feels right to you. But let's start with your trip to Alaska, right? When you were 21 years old and you drive close to 5,000 miles in a VW Bug. And, this is your first big adventure. And I just want to know, you talk about a lot of things that you learned along the way, like, the goodness of strangers and resilience and budgeting. But I'm curious, like, what do you think you're now looking back? What do you think that your biggest takeaway from that experience was? And do you think your life would be completely different if you had not driven to Alaska that summer?
Well, I'll take the second question first. My life would totally not be the same had I not taken that trip. That was a coming of age trip. Mm-hmm. It was a pivotal journey at a young age that really set the course for my life from there on out. And it was a great adventure. You know, I could talk about that more, but to your other question, you know, what is the one takeaway I got from that trip, you know, it's kind of influenced me all these years, and there have been a number of them. But I think, you know, the one thing would be, if you're gonna go out there, get yourself a decent tent.
And
And from that trip until right now, I have never gone anywhere without a decent tent. That one that I had on that trip, I only took it out one time. Yeah, you know, and I put it back in the box.
yeah,
And that was it. So yeah, I learned a lot of lessons on that trip, but that one, you know, also, you know, better planning.
yeah.
Bring a bit more money.
But you brought everything you had and you made it work.
Yes, you know, I made it work. It was my first trip outside the United States. I'd never, of course, been to Alaska before. In fact, in 1966, Alaska had only been a state for like 10 minutes. You know, there were only about, you know, 15 people living in Alaska. I mean, nobody went to Alaska. When I was back there in 1966, people used to talk about Alaska like they talk today about the moon. You know, Alaska's the final frontier. You know, oil hadn't been discovered up there yet. There was nobody living there. The only people who went there were like these kind of antisocial people who needed to get away from civilization and wanted to go out there on their own. And that was what Alaska was back then. And so for me, you know, a city kid growing up in New York City, to say, you know what, I think I'm gonna go to Alaska.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, why, what are you gonna do? How can you? They couldn't put their head around somebody going up there. Now, of course, it's a lot different, but it's still a bit of an adventure to go up there. So
Yeah.
imagine what it was like. I mean, in 1966, you know, the last 1,200 miles were on a road that wasn't even paved. You know, and it was really something. But I, you know, I love adventure. I'm a curious guy, and it seemed like a good idea at the time to be the northernmost vehicle in the whole Western Hemisphere. I would do it again, actually.
You would do it again?
Yeah, actually, I did it again. I do it a third time.
So a few thoughts or questions. I have either two opposing visions of what happened to that tent you brought. Either like you burned it in effigy or it exists in like the Explorers Museum. So what actually happened to that tent?
Well, to be honest, I don't even know. All I do know is I never used it again.
Yeah.
I was so embarrassed when I took it out of the box and looked at it. There was no thought about saving it. You know, I didn't think I would be doing so many hundreds of other trips in the past where I want to look back and see that trip perhaps in a different way. I never thought I'd be writing a book about it at that time. Mm-hmm. What I should have done is taken it back to the store that I bought it from and asked the guy for my money back.
$10, that would have helped. And speaking of money, on that trip, I think the takeaway I had from that chapter was just that a component of adventure is serendipity and unexpected help from strangers. And especially on that first trip, whether it was the gas station where you could, you know, work for fuel and food, or finally getting to the northernmost point and having someone move their car, you know, so you can accomplish your goal, or picking up the hitchhiker on the way back. Like there were so many just moments of what long distance hikers like to call trail magic. But I'm wondering, in all your travels, all your adventures, what is the one act of kindness from a stranger that stands out the most to you?
Well, now we're talking about a lot of kind gestures here.
Yeah.
And in a way, you know, picking one, I don't want to marginalize, you know, all the other great people out there who have helped me out and reached out and made things possible. So with that in mind, you know, I'm going to stay with that that first trip to Alaska, where, you know, when I finally got to the end of that northernmost road, after all those hardships and all those days sleeping in the car, and to look and see that my car was not the northernmost car, it was the second, you know, and you know, I just kind of lost it, you know, and I didn't expect that beautiful guy who was living there to understand my my feelings then, although it was probably written all over my face, you know. I mean, the guy couldn't believe, you know, he looks out his window and he sees a beat up Volkswagen with New York plates, and then some 20-year-old black dude sitting in his driveway. And you know, he, you know, but yet when I told him what happened and why I was there, you know, he was like, all right. He said, are you hungry? I was so hungry. Oh, so hungry. And he gave me a place to sleep in his cabin. And the next day he got up and he moved the wreck of a car that was blocking me. I mean, he didn't have to do that.
Right.
I mean, but he got it, you know, and he realized what that whole voyage meant to me, and he wanted to give it that kind of happy ending, and I really appreciated it. I still do, and you know, it's just another random act of kindness by somebody who 10 minutes before didn't even know me, and didn't even know how to react that I was there at first. But you know, I hope, Charlie, I hope somewhere he's still up there telling that story about when some guy in a Volkswagen pulled up into his driveway.
He is. He's still up there. He is still telling that story. So another question, because this was not your only trip to Alaska, right? And several years later, you went back to hike and paddle in the Brooks Range with your friend. And I just, you know, so many of your adventures were in cold weather places, and we sort of already touched on this, but you go to Alaska, you go to the Baffin Islands, you go to the Canal Trail. Like, you went to these really, really remote northern places that were very cold, and you already said you don't like being cold. So I want to know, like, what is the allure or draw to you of these places that are so remote, so cold, and so far north?
Well, I don't go there because they're cold. I go there even though they're cold.
Okay.
Actually, it's a couple of reasons. Number one, I find that in the colder regions, especially in the Arctic and on the tundra, above the tree lines, your vision, you can see a lot more. You know, the panoramic views are not blocked by trees and other things like they are in a forest. And so I like to go where I can see long distances. So it doesn't necessarily have to be cold weather. It could be just above the tree line anywhere.
Yeah.
But I'm not really that crazy about just long walks in the woods where I just can't see that far. You know about long walks in the woods, I know.
We're in the Appalachians. That's all there is.
No. And I've got about 600 or 700 miles on the app trail that I've done over the years. But you know, my trips are more motivated by what I want to see and what I want to learn. I don't mind hiking just for hiking's sake. I love to hike, but most of my trips had some kind of an objective. Usually to be in touch with indigenous people,
right,
who may live there, but it may also be, you know, I once went to Alaska to follow a caribou migration. I wanted to walk on a glacier to see what that was like.
Yeah.
I wanted to be far north enough to see the northern lights, the aurora borealis. And so whenever I plan a trip, there's usually an objective behind it. And that's kind of why I go there. And wherever that takes me, that's where I'll go. So in the past, there have been a number of them in cold weather locations.
Right.
But it's not because I'm I want to beat myself up and freeze to death.
Yeah. Well, that, that was another question I wanted to ask you is so many of these experiences, even though you were going to very remote places. And actually, one question I meant to ask in the short form questions was, what's the longest you've been without seeing another human?
21 days.
Where was that?
That was on the Cannell Trail.
Okay.
Actually, at Cannell Trail, I did see a couple of people for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
But for most of that trip, I didn't see a single soul in the entire, 230 miles, 170 miles, had 233-mile trip.
Yeah.
And it was fine with me, by the way.
Yeah.
It was totally cool just to be out there on my own. I don't typically miss people a lot. I think it's maybe the notion of living and growing up in a city like New York,
Yeah.
and then going out and the lifestyle is so different, that the contrast really appeals to me.
I mean, that's to me what is unique. I know a lot of people who could be very content to be by themselves for 21 days, but most of them don't live in New York City. So somehow, you found balance through the extremes. But, I got sidetracked wanting to ask that. But the thing that also stood out during the book is like getting on and off the trail often became a very cultural experience. And you talk about going to Australia and wanting to meet someone of Aboriginal descent, and you ended up having a really strange encounter there. But like going to Peru and like really wanting to learn about the Quechua people, and so I'm wondering if there's one cultural encounter or one lesson that you took away from having one of those cross-cultural experiences that still really stands out or sticks with you today.
Yes, I would say that what I've learned in a lot of these trips and a lot of these visits to Indigenous people is that they're more similar to me than different. Everybody wants to, to raise their kids in a healthy way. Everybody wants to have the freedom to live their life in a way that's going to be fulfilling to them. And so although they're in different environments and different lifestyles and so forth, I'm always amazed at how the similarities match up against the differences, and how there are a lot more similarities in people's lifestyles and their expectations than you would expect to encounter when you meet people and talk to people. I love to sit around and listen to the old folks tell the stories.
Yeah.
of how their people got to where they are and what the history was and the tradition and the culture and all that. I love hearing those stories. But then at the same time, as soon as they finish telling me stories, then they want to hear my story.
Yeah.
What's it like living in New York City?
Yeah.
What's all that? They can't really imagine that. And so I'm always struck by how similar people are, no matter where you go, in terms of their basic expectations and how they want to live their life.
Well, yeah, I think stories really connect people too. I love storytelling, which is one reason I love these books and these interviews. I just love people's stories. And keeping with sort of the similarities and differences that we're talking about, I really loved in the introduction to your book. And I'll look up again the author of the intro. Dr. Roscoe Brown, who was a Tuskegee Airman and former commander of the 100th Fighter Squadron of the 332nd Fighter Group for World War II. And one of the things he really highlights in this introduction is like, you are an explorer. Like you are an adventurer and you're an explorer and you're extremely accomplished, and you don't need to necessarily be known as an African-American explorer. And in a different way, I've experienced that I get put in like women specific groups all the time, which I'm a woman and that's great. But I also feel like I'm part of a broader category of explorers. And with all your experience and all your adventures and serving as the board chair for the DEI committee for the Explorers Club, I was just wondering what your thoughts are when it comes to race and travel and exploration.
Well, first of all, I feel as you do that you don't want to be put into like a box when what you're about is a lot broader than that, and what you want to accomplish is a lot broader. At the same time, I can't, escape the fact that I am African American. I'm happy that I am,
right.
And that because of all the trips that I've taken, I'm encouraged to try to motivate, people like myself, especially people who grew up, in the city like I did, who were from working class, environment, to say, hey, listen. If you have a dream, you can make that dream a reality, and you don't have to be held back by your ethnicity or your race or your culture or your religion or anything like that. If you want it badly enough and you try hard enough, any dream that you have, you can make it come true. And so, when I talk to kids in school, and I talk to different organizations and groups, especially those with an ethnic or lifestyle orientation, they recognize that I'm a minority, I'm an African American, but at the same time, I can do whatever anybody else wants to do,
right.
And it's all because of of having a dream and wanting to do it, and being able to overcome whatever obstacles are in the way. So, when I talk to kids in school, I tell them that, and they're really encouraged to hear it. And the teachers like for them to hear it from somebody who looks like them,
right.
who's been out there and has done it. And my presentation, when I give it to them, is called, "If I can do it, you can do it."
Yeah.
Because I had nothing special growing up. It was just an ordinary, as I say, working class family. My dad was a truck driver. My mom a homemaker. They didn't have any education beyond high school, but they encouraged us, my brother and sister and I, to live out our dreams and to not be held back by any obstacles. And so, I'm not really crazy about, being like the first Black person to climb this mountain or to hike that trail. That's not really that important to me. What's important to me is that everybody, minorities, yes, but everybody can benefit by being in the great outdoors, and you should go out there, give it a try, see what's out there, and see how it impacts you as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really well said. And even though, your race does distinguish you in some ways, in my mind, when I was reading your book, the part that made it so interesting and unique to me is you're this born and bred city boy who does these hardcore adventures. And then B, you are a very accomplished professional. I mean, you had a very successful business that you have run for now close to 50 years. And that is a very hard balance to have, this passion for adventure and then also a professional career. And that doesn't even include the social component. So I'm wondering if you could talk about, I have a lot of questions with this, but maybe first just the idea of work, life, adventure, family balance, and then also how adventure and business sort of overlapped. Like if you learned something from one that really helped the other, or if you needed one in order to be able to do the other, just the relationship between all those things.
Mm-hmm. Well, it started really when I got out of college. I had a degree in.
Is that a business call?
No, I can ignore it, but should I mute this for a minute?
I don't know. I don't know. Do you want us to hear your answering machine?
Give me 1 second.
Okay, yeah. So if you guys are on Facebook or on Zoom, we are going to open it up to audience questions very soon. So go ahead, write your audience questions. Even if you're on Facebook, you can write it there. I have someone who looks on Facebook and then text me the questions from Facebook Live. So if you have something you want to ask JR, go ahead, write it in our chat in the Zoom or write it on Facebook, and we'll get to those questions in just another 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay. So, you know, I was the first person in my family to go to college and to get a degree, and I understood that having an education was going to be very important, and so I was able to. I went into marketing. I had a couple of jobs in corporate, different organizations, General Foods, Pepsi-Cola, and then I started my own business. In 1975, obviously the first in my family to have a business of my own. But when I started it, it's called JRH Marketing Services. I'm in marketing consulting. When I first started it, even right from the beginning, I was determined that I was not going to let this business kind of overtake or rule my life. Mm-hmm. I had heard so many stories about people going into business. They're working 10, 15, 20 years. They never take a vacation. They never take a weekend off. They're always working 40, 50 hours a week. And I didn't want to be a slave to my business. I wanted my business to support my lifestyle and what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was travel and to backpack and to go around the world and satisfy my curiosity about the natural world and people who live in it. And so right from the beginning, I started planning outdoors trips, or continued to plan outdoors trips. I had a partner with my younger brother, and he was just coming out of graduate school at that time. He had graduated from Harvard. He was the second person in the family to get a degree. Mm-hmm. And he came in, I brought him in, I convinced him, well, I kind of twisted his arm to be my partner in business. He learned the business, and he was really the reason why I was able to do most of these trips. Right. Because when I left, there was no way to contact him. There was no way to see how the business was going or anything like that. I had to trust that everything was going to be working out all right. And it was, so he held down the fort, and the business was able to function in such a way that I could take time off, and I had the financial ability to put these expeditions together. And that's what I wanted to do. I love marketing, I love my work, but I also had other objectives, and on a personal side, I was married. I have 2 kids, and I was a single parent when their mother passed away. So just raising them. So the 3 things came together. My family was always very supportive of not only my brother and I's business, but also my willingness and desire to get out by myself into the world and see what was out there. So it was a perfect storm in a great way that allowed me to live this lifestyle that I've been living, and it's been great.
If this is personal, just skip through it. We'll go to the next one. But I have a friend, that answer just made me think, like, I have a friend who's an adventurer and has children, and she lost her spouse and now feels a lot more sensitive to risk because of the responsibility she has as a single parent. Did you feel that? Did that alter your adventures?
I had that same feeling of risk. To be honest, it would have been just as risky even if I had no kids. But of course, thinking that, I'm the one who has to support them and so forth. Yes, it was a thought, and something that I had to think about a lot. Mm-hmm. But I think though the path that led me on was to say, it wasn't to say don't go. Yeah. It was to say, if you're going to go, get really, really good at planning. Uh-huh. And make sure that you anticipate all the things that can go wrong, and have a response for all those things before you even leave home. Now, of course, ultimately, there's no guarantee that even with all the preparation in the world, that everything's going to work out fine. But at the same time, there's no guarantee that if I stayed home and sat on the couch, that everything would work out fine either.
Yeah.
You know, and so I got very, very good at planning. I made a lot of decisions based on experience that I was able to pick up. And I understood the risk factors involved, and I was not willing to go too far. You know, if something got to be too edgy or too dangerous, I had no problem turning around and going back. And so, yeah, it was something that I had to consider because I did have a family,
Yeah.
but they were always, you know, very supportive. You know, and now my kids are both grown up. And they're like, you know, you know, Dad's still going out there. Which is cool.
Awesome. That's awesome. Okay, I have 2 more questions, and then we're going to open it up for the audience questions. But there are different types of adventures in different seasons of life, and most of the adventures you talked about and way out there they were more extreme adventures. And then you had this experience in the Alps, which was a more civilized adventure. And I smiled and laughed out loud so much in that chapter. I had a similar experience where I was used to being in backcountry, and then I was on the Camino de Santiago and a little just snotty, thinking this is not going to be the wilderness experience that I am looking for. And then I remember, like, you know, the second morning at 10 a.m., I'm sipping a latte beside the trail, and I'm just thinking, I don't hate this. Like, this is actually really lovely. So I was wondering if you could talk about like some gentler adventures or more civilized adventures and what you enjoyed or learned from those.
I like the contrast, you know, that trip that I took on the haute route from Chamonix to Zermatt, it was not a wilderness trip. You know, and to be honest, at first I had some concerns about it. You know, I thought, do I really want to do this? I mean, you know, it's not really wilderness. It's not really out there. But you know, as I mentioned in the book, I met somebody early on who said, "Hey, dude, man, it is what it is. You know, get into it. You know, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
You know, make the adjustment, you know, get it together." And I'm happy I did. And, you know, it's that trip and a few others that I've taken like that, the contrast between those trips and the really deep wilderness trips, it gives you a different perspective and, you know, a different outlook. You know, that it doesn't have to be all crazy or anything like that. I really enjoyed that trip. You know, once I got my mind together, you know, and wrapped around the fact that, you know, everybody likes to say, hike your own hike.
Right.
You know, and wherever you are, that's absolutely true. And, you know, so when I first got there, I had to kind of remember that, you know, I had to say, listen, this is where you are. This is what it is. And just go for it, you know? And so I really did enjoy it, although it wasn't my typical extreme, you know, remote kind of a trek.
Yeah, it sounded lovely to me. I enjoyed that trek. And then the last question I have for you is, and I know just really a fraction of your adventures are represented in your book, but so many of them, you had been such a planner after that first one, and you had laid everything out, and you had, you know, such detailed itineraries. And yet, and I feel like almost 80% of them, there was a dramatic change, or you turned back. And I know that's so hard for some people, and you seem to embrace it really well. And I'm hoping you can speak for my last question, just speak to the adventure of turning back. What is that like?
Well, first of all, it could be very smart. You know, it could also save your life.
Yes.
But, you know, on a broader level, though, it speaks to who you are as an individual and how much you're willing to realize that nature is bigger than we are, and that sometimes situations happen out there where it's just not meant to be for you to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And when you weigh the risks involved, you know, sometimes it's just better to say, hey, you know what? It's not happening this time. I'm gonna have to turn around and I'm gonna have to go back. It becomes a question of how do you handle that, you know? And I think that, you know, if you're smart, you realize that once it gets to be a little too risky and once it gets to be a little too big, that it's not cowardice that makes you turn back. It's actually your intellect that says, you know what, it's just time to turn back.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've learned from being out there is to accept what life gives you. There's no way you can change nature, and nature is bigger than we are. And so if you can get through and finish a trip the way you planned it, that's great. If you can't, it's always better to come back home alive. That's the way I feel.
Yeah.
And so if that's what it means, then, you know, that's what it means. You know, you can always go back and try it again if that's what you want to do. But I never had any, I've never had any regrets if I ever had to turn back. But I know I would have regretted it if I should have turned back and didn't turn back, and I had to pay the consequences. So I'm happy with all those decisions.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I loved in your book how so many times the decision to make a change or turn back resulted in an adventure that was probably even better.
Right.
You know, like so many cool things happened. The one in Peru with the shaman ceremony, like that was unbelievable.
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened. Yeah, if I hadn't turned back.
Yeah. So at this point, if you're in our Zoom room, go ahead. If you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat box. If you're on Facebook, you write them on the Facebook feed. I'm going to check both and we'll ask JR some audience questions. Okay, so the first one I have is from someone who read your book, and they're asking, in the book on one of your trips, like the day of your trip, you lost your hiking partner unexpectedly at a young age. And how did that event impact your adventures and your outlook on life?
That was really tough.
Yeah.
Kenny was my best friend, not only on the trail, but we were next door neighbors. We were family, our families were close together. And it was such a sudden thing. You know, I had talked to him the night before. We were so excited. We were going up on a canoe trip. And, you know, it's, I'll meet you at the airport tomorrow. I can't wait to go. And then for him to not show up because he had passed away during that night. Yeah, it was tough. It was really tough to lose a friend like that. But, you know, as it happens, you know, a lot of times when you lose a friend, you know, you begin to think about all the good times you had together, and what that friendship has meant over the years, and how grateful, you know, you are to have had that friendship. So it was hard. It was really hard at the beginning. But, you know, over time, you know, grief turned into gratitude, you know, and I was really, even to this day, whenever I think about, whenever I go anywhere, you know, I would see something and I'd say, oh, what would Kenny think, you know, if he saw this, you know, or something like that. And actually, I'm still using his sleeping pad.
Oh, really?
From Thermarest, you know, in 1984 or 85, we bought a Thermarest sleeping pad. And, you know, when he left, his wife, his family, they gave me all his gear. And I thought that as a way of keeping him with me on these trips, I just use his instead of mine. I'm still using it. I used it a couple of months ago in the White Mountains. after all these years. So it's nice to have, kind of a piece of him, along with me on the journey. It's also nice that that sleeping pad lasted, all these years. Hey, you guys out at Thermarest,
I
man.
know. I know. I was going to say that's a testament to your friendship and to Thermarest.
That's
So,
Thermarest. That's right. The gear that gets you through.
yeah. Wow. That's really powerful. I love that you still have his sleeping pad. So a question from the Zoom chat, we'll switch around. One person asked, how does spending time alone in the wilderness better help you to have deeper connections with people when you return?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because it does have an impact. I believe that spending time alone, especially spending time alone, where it's not that there's nobody else with me, but there's nobody else around. It's a different kind of aloneness, and it gives you time to be introspective, to look at yourself and see what kind of a person you are, how you handle different situations, how you make decisions. And really, it also causes you to realize what you have back home, and to be grateful for things that most people kind of take for granted, like being able to take a shower or change your clothes, or go into a refrigerator and get some food, or sleep in a bed. And it's also the same with people. By not having people around, you begin to think about what it is to live in a society and to be surrounded by people, and how you deal with them and how you want them to deal with you. And so I think that, over the years, all those many miles of solo trekking has taught me lessons that are very valuable when you come home. You learn so much about yourself, and you learn so much about the world, and you learn so much about the places that you're visiting. These lessons stay with you when you get back home. And I know, for example, I know for a fact that I got better at business, at my work, because of the trips that I took. There's, being by yourself and out in the wilderness. And I know you know this, Jennifer. I mean, there's you get a certain humility. You realize that you're not the center of the universe,
Yeah.
and that impacts, your relationships when you get back home. And so I've learned so much being out there. A lot of it because I'm alone, but even if I wasn't alone, the learning that I got out there would have been extraordinary.
Yeah. That was a great question. Thank you, David. And that was an awesome answer. So another one from Facebook, one person said, in your book, you talk about being curious. What are you curious about now?
Well, in one word, everything.
Everything.
The best thing about curiosity is that it never ends. That there's always something else that you're going to be curious about. And probably the more curious you are, the more likely it is that your curiosity is going to expand and get greater. So yeah, I'm, every little thing, I want to know what it is. And if it has anything to do with the natural world, I want to go out there, and I want to see it, and so, curiosity is the engine that drives exploration. Curiosity is the motivator. It's the thing that gets you out there. And if you have a curious mind, whether it's curious to study books at home or in a library or at a school, or to go out on a field trip, or to take a wilderness trip or a voyage, it's all about curiosity. And not only am I very curious, I'm happy that I'm curious. I'm glad that I'm curious. And I intend to stay curious, and I hope that I stay curious. And I'm sure I will.
Yeah. Another question. Again, we have a lot of long distance hikers and backpackers in our community. So someone asked, have you ever hiked a long distance trail in the United States?
Yeah, I've done about, well, I've done about 600 miles on the App Trail. I've done about almost 1,000 on a Continental Divide.
Yeah.
Another 400 or 500, maybe a little more on the Pacific Crest Trail. I've done most of the Colorado Trail, and a lot of other hikes as well. You know, maybe not as long, but several weeks. They're all fairly lengthy. Most of my trips, especially the longer ones, have been overseas. But here in the States, you know, I love national parks. And so I visited quite a few already.
Yeah.
And, but most of my longer trips are overseas. And, you know, the longer the better. You know, I want to see things that most people don't see. I want to experience things that most people don't do. And because I had a business, and my business took me overseas for work because I had clients overseas, I accumulated thousands of frequent flyer miles.
Yay.
And so my strategy was do overseas trips while you have the miles.
Yeah.
And then when the miles are gone, you could come back and do the ones in the States.
Right.
And so that's the way I've been working it.
Yeah, that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna combine the two last questions because I think they go really well together. But someone wants to know what your next adventure is, but also someone asked, what is your philosophy for aging gracefully as an adventurer?
Well, obviously, I'm qualified to answer that question.
Because of your grace.
Well, thank you very much. You know, but you know, at my age, I expect to continue backpacking.
Yeah.
Because I love doing it. That's the motivation to stay in shape and to keep it going. And you know, it's something I never got tired of doing. You know, you know, I look forward to my next trip with all the excitement that I've ever looked forward to any of my trips in the past. And, you know, and I think that that's great. I am fortunate. I've stayed in really good shape. I'm very fit. And I really think that I can still do those long treks if I want to, and I do want to. Yeah. There are always places that I still want to go and places I still want to see. And so I intend to do that. And so to the other part of the question, of course, you know, where do I want to go or what's my next trip? You know, COVID obviously has kind of put a monkey wrench in a lot of people's plans. And certainly mine. Last summer, I had a couple of plans. I was going to do one that I think that you did, Jennifer. I wanted to do the Highland Trail across the Scottish Highlands. Yep. But of course that didn't work, nor did another trip that I have planned in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. Yeah. The Berber people live there. And again, I'm interested in people who live, you know, kind of in remote areas or off the grid. And so I have a couple of those two trips are kind of in the can, you know, they're all set to go. I've got all my maps and all my information all collected, and it won't take much to go. And, you know, if travel is still restricted and, you know, you can't get overseas or whatever, you know, I'm looking at this route in Utah. I don't even know how to pronounce the name. Unitas Mountains.
Yeah.
Unita. Yeah. Unita. Yeah. There's an interesting looking, you know, it's only about 100 miles, but, you know, if I can't get overseas, you know, I think maybe I'll check that one out. But I'm always open to something new. You know, if I happen to be looking at the Discovery Channel and I see something and I say, oh, wow, look at that. I need to go there and see that.
Yeah.
Or somebody mentions a country or something that they've done. I'm like, oh, wow, you know, I need to get over there and see it. So it's a combination of curiosity, love of adventure, being fortunate enough to be fit and economically able to do it all. And so, you know, it's been a great run, and I'm still running against the wind.
Yeah. Yeah. So that song's gonna be stuck in your head now the next.
Oh yeah, now.
Well, I've always wanted to go to the Atlas Mountains. And so if you need a hiking partner who won't talk to you for most of the day and give you plenty of space, you let me know. I'm serious. I would go. And I hope Asheville gets added to your short list too, because we'd love to have you down here someday. But this, I knew it was going to be delightful when I read your book, and I sent you this email that, again, like, your writing is just so, you're a really great writer. It's really eloquent, but it's so just digestible. You know, like nothing was tedious. I know your hiking was tedious and the weather you had was tedious, but nothing about the writing. It just flowed so well. So for those of us who have read Way Out There, thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories with us. For those of you who have not read Way Out There, highly, highly, highly recommend it. This is going on my special place on my bookshelves where I keep my favorite adventure narratives. If you're interested in a copy, we have them author signed by JR, and you can buy them at blueridgehikingco.com, or if you're local, we hope you come into the shop. We want to thank our nonprofit partners, the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, for helping host this Armchair Adventure Book Club and sharing it with their community as well. And again, this is our last in our series this year. We had an incredible set of authors and stories, and we've also had a couple requests for us to sort of rerun this book club in the fall. Since it's a 4-book series, we might look at doing in-person events in Asheville or doing online community events in the fall. So if you've not picked up these books, they are also good, and we may revisit them later in the year. So thank you to everyone who's joined us for this talk or all 4 talks this year. It's been a joy. These books are such gifts, and I hope that we see all of you, including JR, out safely on the trail later this year. So thank you all. Thank you, JR. This will be on YouTube and Facebook later. You can find it there. And yeah, happy trails. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Ciao.